Part 1. The Humble Woman and the Door That Closed. In the heart of a bustling city, where cars streamed like the unending flow of time, a quiet woman stepped into a luxury car dealership. She wore simple clothesno jewelry, no makeup, just a gentle gaze and a warm, sincere smile. Her name was Clara Bennett, a name no one in that showroom recognized, and perhaps no one really cared to. As she approached the reception desk, her smile still soft on her face, a doubtful glance met her before a word was spoken. The manager, Martin Grantonley, needed 3 seconds to make his judgment. Must be lost. This isn't the used car lot. Clara didn't get the chance to speak before his eyes gestured subtly toward the far end of the room where the more affordable models sat quietly. It was an unspoken reminder. You don't belong here. No one asked what she needed. No one listened. And no one saw the truth of who she was, a soul full of compassion, a strong woman who had weathered life's fiercest storms. And yet, in that cold space of assumptions and silent judgment, Clara smiled. Not a smile of weakness, but the kind of smile from someone who's long been underestimated and who knows her true worth lies far beyond appearances. What seemed like a simple encounter was actually the beginning of a powerful lesson about kindness, respect, and the quiet miracles hidden in the most ordinary of moments. Have you ever been judged by how you looked? Stay with this story, because what happens next might just change the way you see the world. When Clara walked out of the dealership that day, there were no tears, just a slight shake of the head. Not out of hurt, but because she was used to it. Used to the doubt in people's eyes. Too used to it to be surprised anymore. But there was one thing Martin Grant, the arrogant manager, could never have imagined. The humble woman he had just dismissed was actually the founder of an international charity that had transformed the lives of thousands of disabled children around the world. Clara Bennett, this unassuming woman, was not only a woman of immense heart, but also one of remarkable independence and influence. Financially secure, highly respected, and with a net worth rivaling that of many public business figures. That day, she didn't come looking for something luxurious for herself. She came searching for a special gift, a high-end car for her younger sister, who had just overcome a 3-year battle with cancer. Clara didn't need a red carpet. She didn't need people to bow to her status. She just needed someone to listen, even for a minute. But instead, all she received were cold stares, condescending tones, and silent judgment from head to toe, all because of a simple outfit and a pair of worn shoes. How many times in our lives have we misjudged someone just because they didn't look the way we expected? Clara wasn't angry, but someone else was. Someone who was about to step into this story and change everything in a way no one saw coming. And when he did, it wouldn't just be the doors of that dealership that opened, but the doors of awareness. The next morning, soft sunlight spilled over the street in front of Imperial Motors, the luxury car dealership, as if nothing had happened. The staff were dressed sharply in their expensive suits, and espressos were being served like clockwork, just as they were every other day. But then, a deep, commanding sound filled the air, the unmistakable purr of a limited edition Rolls-Royce Phantom worth over $1.2 million. It didn't just arrive, it commanded the road. Every head turned. The entire atmosphere shifted, as if the world had paused. The rear door opened, and out stepped Edward Bennett, a refined gentleman with a presence that demanded attention. The silent billionaire behind a global biotech empire rarely seen in public. Never one for the spotlight, was now standing at the very dealership where his wife had been so cruelly dismissed just a day before. He entered calmly. No anger, no raised voice, just one quiet request. I'd like to speak with the person who dealt with my wife yesterday. A cold silence swept across the showroom. Manager Martin's face turned pale in an instant, though he forced a nervous smile. Sir, I believe you may be mistaken, Mr. Bennett. But Edward replied gently, No, I'm not mistaken. I've come to buy a car, but more importantly, I've come to remind everyone here of something. A person's worth is not measured by their appearance or their wallet. Then, he turned toward Liam, the young sales associate who had been the only one to greet Clara the day before, offering a kind smile and polite words, even though it wasn't his job to help her. Edward said, will be handling my order today, and not just for a single car, but for an entire fleet, for both my company and our charity foundation. The room fell silent. No one moved. No one spoke. Martin stood frozen. The senior executives were called in. Word began to leak to the media. But Edward didn't care about the growing buzz. He simply smiled, placing a hand on Liam's shoulder as if passing the torch to the next generation of those who choose kindness. Because sometimes punishment doesn't come in the form of anger. It comes in the quiet moment when you realize the opportunity you lost was given to someone else, because they chose humility over pride. The atmosphere inside Imperial Motors felt like it had just weathered a silent storm. No one shouted. There were no dramatic confrontation, but the look in the eyes of the staff, the quiet presence of the billionaire customer, and the calm steadiness of the young employee Liam somehow, it changed everything. That very afternoon, a handwritten letter was delivered to Mr. Edward Bennett's office. It was from Martine, the same manager who had coldly dismissed Clara just the day before. But this wasn't your standard apology. His handwriting trembled. His words were raw, honest. I've worked in customer service for over 20 years. And yesterday, I realized I've forgotten the most important part of this job, serving with heart. I misjudged your wife not because she lacked wealth or beauty, but because I've grown used to seeing the world through price tags. Edward didn't respond right away. That evening, he simply passed the letter to Clara as they sat together in the small garden behind their home, the same garden Clara tended to with her gentle, steady hands. She read the letter, then gave a quiet nod. You know, she said softly, some people only change when they're given a second chance. And so, a door opened not for punishment, but for healing and growth. The following week, Martin showed up at the headquarters of Wings of Hope, the global charity Clara had founded. But this time, he wasn't wearing a suit. He wore an apron. He held a box of hot meals, ready to serve children with disabilities undergoing long-term care. At first, he was clumsy. But then, as he handed a meal to a little girl clutching a worn teddy bear, he suddenly remembered what it felt like to do something not for profit, but for someone else. Martin's story didn't change because of shame, it changed because of grace. And Liam, the young employee who had shown Clara kindness from the start, was officially offered the role of fleet manager for Edward's entire business, along with a note that read, "True worth isn't about a get, it's about character." Sometimes, the smallest gesture, a polite nod, a gentle word can open the door to an entirely new chapter in someone's life. This story may have looked like it ended with a luxury car purchase, but in truth, that was just the beginning. A beginning built on simple acts and hearts willing to listen. It was a quiet Saturday morning at Wings of Hope, the support center for children with disabilities. Martin stood behind the food counter, awkwardly ladling soup into bowls. His volunteer apron was a bit too big, and the once stern face now carried traces of nervousness and a hint of humility. A little boy on crutches approached him with a wide grin. "Mister, can I have an extra roll, please?" Martin paused, then chuckled softly. For the first time in years, he felt a kind of joy that didn't come from sealing a major deal, but from a simple nod of gratitude. For an entire week, Martin worked hard mopping floors, carrying trays, building block towers with the kids, and listening to their small but deeply real dreams. "I want to be a doctor when I grow up, so I can help my little brother walk again. I wish I had a pink wheelchair so mommy wouldn't have to carry me every day." Each story felt like a gentle knock on the shell he'd built around himself. For years, the shell meant to project strength, success, and control, leaving no room for vulnerability. One quiet afternoon, Martin found himself sitting beside Clara, same woman he had once dismissed, not long ago. There were no excuses left to give, only gratitude remained. "I spent so many years not really seeing anyone but myself. Thank you for not responding with anger, but instead giving me the chance to remember what it means to be human." Clara simply smiled. Her eyes, kind and calm, had seen many like him before. People once lost, now slowly finding their way back to themselves. From that day forward, Martin was no longer the former manager of Imperial Motors. He became the head of compassion and service training for every dealership in the company's network. His lessons didn't come from a textbook. They weren't printed on any poster. They began with a simple truth. Don't judge someone by their clothes. Judge them by how they make you feel when they walk away. In this life, no one is ever too old to change. All it takes is someone willing to offer a second chance and a reason to change from the heart. That morning, the glass facade of Imperial Motors reflected an unusual sight. A sleek line of luxury cars, Rolls-Royce, Bentley, and more gliding silently but commandingly into the dealership's lot. Staff members looked uneasy. Curious customers whispered, "What's going on? Who could it possibly be?" Then, from a midnight blue Rolls-Royce Phantom, stepped out Edward Lancaster, legendary businessman. His face calm, his tailored gray suit understated yet elegant. No introductions were needed. His presence alone silenced the entire room. After a brief pause, Edward spoke, gently but clearly. "I'm here to complete a transaction, but not just to buy cars." No one dared to move. "I'm placing an order for a fleet of premium vehicles on behalf of my company and my wife's foundation, Wings of Hope. But before I sign anything, I need to know, does this place truly deserve to represent our brand?" A simple question, yet it hit like thunder. The branch manager rushed out, forced smile in place. But Edward didn't look at him. Instead, he turned toward Martin, who was standing quietly in the corner, head bowed. And then, something no one expected happened. "Martin, I want you to personally oversee this entire order. And I want you to train your new team in a service philosophy that puts people first." The entire room froze. Martin looked up, eyes red, voice trembling. "You still trust me?" Edward smiled. "I don't just trust you, I believe in genuine change. And I believe this dealership can begin a new chapter on, where we don't just sell cars, we offer respect." Clara, standing by her husband, softly added, "We're not looking for a dealership obsessed with profit. We're looking for a place that can recognize human value, even when it's hidden beneath simple clothes." No one spoke, but something powerful stirred inside each person there. A mix of shame, gratitude, and inspiration. Daniel, the young employee who had once stood up for Clara, was personally appointed by Edward as the new head of customer care with one heartfelt request: keep that same heart you had on day one. Don't let any suit dry it out. That day, Imperial Motors changed. Not because of a multi-million-dollar deal, but because it finally learned something deeper. Respect isn't reserved for the wealthy. It belongs to anyone with a heart that knows how to love. A week after that emotional turning point at Imperial Motors, the dealership had transformed. It was no longer just about selling cars, but about restoring the soul of service, the power of honesty, and the respect every person deserves. Edward Lancaster's actions didn't just teach Martin and his team a valuable lesson. They sent a powerful message to the entire community. Martin, someone who saw the world through the lens of hierarchy and judgment, had now become a symbol of change. He began leading training sessions with a whole new approach. Not just teaching how to sell, but how to listen, how to recognize people by their actions, not their appearance. One day, a customer walked into the showroom in plain clothes. Martin no longer saw through the old lens of wealth or status. Instead, he saw a human being, worthy of kindness. And he remembered, true success is built on the foundation of respect. Daniel, the young man who once stood up for Clara, had now stepped into his new role as head of customer care. But something in him had shifted too. He no longer just helped clients to close a deal, he helped them feel seen, heard, and valued. He understood now. Every interaction is a chance to plant a seed of kindness, a seed that could grow into something lasting. Word began to spread. One day, an older man walked in, someone who had once been dismissed at this very dealership simply because of his worn-out clothes. He shared his story with Martin, recounting how invisible he'd felt. But now, he was treated like the most important person in the room. That experience moved him so deeply. He didn't just buy a car, he told all his friends to come here too. But it didn't stop there. Edward Lancaster, encouraged by Claire, decided to host a major event to raise awareness about the power of respect and compassion across every industry. He invited influencers, leaders in the auto world, and their most loyal customers. On the day of the event, the spotlight wasn't just on luxury vehicles. It was on the people who had dared to change, who chose to live by a new set of values. The gathering became a celebration of humanity, a tribute to kindness, a place where dignity was the real luxury. That evening, Edward took the stage. His voice was calm, warm, but carried weight. Today, we're not just here to celebrate beautiful cars. We're here to celebrate something far more important: respect for people. The ability to see someone's worth, regardless of where they come from, what they wear, or what they own. That's the real lesson Claire and I hope to share. The room went silent. Then came a wave of applause, long, heartfelt, and thunderous. People didn't stand because of a giveaway or a prize. They stood for something far greater. A belief, reborn, that no matter who you are, you deserve to be treated with respect. And that kindness is what brings us closer together. Trust spreads. Even the smallest act of kindness has the power to spark massive change. And the story of Clara and Edward wasn't just a lesson in goodness, it was proof that you never know whose life you're changing, simply by treating them with sincerity. And so, the story didn't end there. Martineau, a beloved, respected manager, had finally learned. Change doesn't always begin with something grand. Sometimes, it begins with something small, but with the power to ripple out in ways we may never fully understand. In the end, the story of Clara and Edward Lancaster sparked more than just a quiet revolution in the automotive industry. More importantly, it left behind profound lessons about the true worth of a person and the transformative power of kindness. At Imperial Motors, gone were the days when employees judged customers by how they dressed. Now every client, no matter their background, was treated with respect, warmth, and care. This new way of working brought about a remarkable shift in the culture of the company. Martin, once the symbol of prejudice, had become the face of change. He didn't just transform as a profession, he became a bridge between colleagues. In every conversation, every bit of guidance, Martin wasn't just teaching sales techniques, he was planting seeds of empathy, patience, and sincerity. One day, Danielle, the passionate young employee who had stood up for Claire, stood before Martin to report on an important deal. But what he spoke about wasn't just numbers or targets. He shared something deeper, how his heart had changed through his interactions with customers. He no longer saw his role as selling a car, but creating a meaningful experience, one where the customer felt valued. Martin smiled, filled with quiet pride. He knew then that he had learned not just how to sell a car, but how to share the real value of human dignity and respect. Months later, a large-scale event was held at Imperial Motors to honor Clara and Edward. But it was more than a celebration. It was a gathering of gratitude, a heartfelt tribute where every guest, from employees to longtime clients, felt something extraordinary in the air. Because what had changed at Imperial Motors wasn't just policies or processes, it was the heart of the place. Edward Lancaster stood on stage, eyes steady as he looked out at the crowd. He didn't feel proud of his million-dollar car, nor of the wealth he had amassed. What filled him with the deepest joy was the change he had witnessed in the people around him. Tonight, we're not just celebrating luxury cars, he said, his voice rich with emotion. We're celebrating a journey, one I believe none of us will ever forget. A journey into kindness, into rediscovering the value of people, and into learning how to see others, not through what they wear or what they own, but through the eyes of the heart. His words echoed across the room. A hush fell. Then came a thunderous wave of applause, not for the wealth or the cars, but for the dawn of something new, a time where compassion and respect would be the highest form of currency. Claire stood beside her husband, glowing in the soft light. Her golden hair shimmered, but what truly drew attention wasn't her beauty. It was the genuine smile she wore and the quiet humility that radiated from within. Claire knew that this change wasn't just about recognizing human worth. It had sparked a new way of being, a world where people treated each other with respect, kindness, and empathy. The story of Clara and Edward proved one thing: true change doesn't always begin with grand gestures. Sometimes, it starts with the smallest act, a simple gesture of kindness that carries immense power. Respect not only uplifts those who receive it, it enriches the soul of those who give it. And so, their story became a living testament that we must never judge others by appearances, that every person has a unique, inherent worth, and that kindness will always find its way to shine, to spread, and to inspire. When we choose to live with sincerity and keep giving love freely, we don't just transform ourselves, we transform the world around us. As this story comes to a close, we realize that the greatest happiness isn't in what we possess, but in how we make others feel seen, respected, and loved. And maybe this is not the end, but a new beginning. for those brave enough to change and to believe in the true value of the human heart, never forget, kindness is always the key to a more beautiful, hopeful world.